A court's authority does not end with its words. Orders are not suggestions. Commands are not optional. And when those commands are ignored, delayed, or openly defied, the court has a mechanism to enforce obedience. It is not subtle. It is not symbolic. It is called contempt of court. And today we examine how the law responds when its authority is challenged. I am Polemopicus, and that is the subject we now investigate.
Courts issue orders. Appear at this time. Produce these documents. Stop this conduct. Comply with this ruling. The entire legal system depends on those orders being followed. But what happens when they are not? What happens when a person refuses to comply, or disrupts proceedings, or ignores the authority of the court entirely? The answer is found in a doctrine called contempt of court. Contempt is how courts enforce their authority when compliance breaks down. Contempt of court is a legal finding that a person has disobeyed a court order, disrupted court proceedings, or shown disrespect that interferes with the administration of justice. It is not about disagreement. It is not about losing a case. It is about conduct that undermines the court's ability to function. When a court finds contempt, it may impose penalties designed to compel compliance, punish misconduct, or preserve order. Contempt is generally divided into two categories: civil contempt and criminal contempt. Civil contempt is coercive. Its purpose is to force compliance with a court order. For example, a person refuses to produce documents, a party violates a court injunction, or someone ignores a subpoena. The court may impose sanctions, including fines or even detention, until the person complies. Civil contempt is often described this way. The person holds the key to their own release. Once they comply, the contempt can end. Criminal contempt is punitive. It is used to punish past misconduct. For example, disrupting a courtroom proceeding, openly defying a judge's authority, or repeated violations of court orders. The goal is not to compel future compliance, but to address behavior that has already occurred. Penalties may include fines, fixed jail sentences, and other sanctions imposed as punishment. Another important distinction is how the contempt occurs. Direct contempt happens in the presence of the court. For example, interrupting proceedings, refusing to follow instructions in court, or engaging in disruptive behavior before the judge. Because the judge directly observes the conduct, action can be immediate. Indirect contempt occurs outside the courtroom. For example, failing to comply with a court order, ignoring deadlines, or violating injunctions. In these cases, the court typically follows a process: notice of the alleged violation, opportunity to respond, and a hearing to determine whether contempt occurred. This is one of the most important principles. A person does not have to agree with a court order, but they are required to comply with it unless and until it is modified or overturned. The proper response to a disagreeable order is appeal, motion for reconsideration, or legal challenge through proper channels, not disobedience. Contempt exists to enforce that boundary. In many cases, contempt requires establishing that the violation was willful. This means the person knew about the order, the person had the ability to comply, and the person chose not to comply. If compliance is genuinely impossible, that may be a defense. But inability must be real, not strategic. Courts evaluate whether the failure to comply was intentional or unavoidable. Contempt arises in many contexts, including failure to comply with subpoenas, violation of restraining orders or injunctions, refusal to pay court-ordered obligations, disruption of courtroom proceedings, or failure to follow discovery orders. In each case, the underlying issue is the same. A court order was issued and not followed. Courts have broad authority to enforce contempt findings. Possible consequences include monetary fines, daily penalties for continued non-compliance, orders compelling action, incarceration and civil contempt situations, or fixed jail sentences in criminal contempt. The severity depends on the nature of the violation, whether it is ongoing, whether it is repeated, and the impact on the court's authority. Although powerful, contempt is used with caution. Courts recognize that orders may be misunderstood, circumstances may change, or compliance may be difficult. Because of this, courts often provide opportunities to comply, issue warnings, and allow time to correct behavior. Contempt is typically a last step, not the first. But when it is used, it is meant to be effective. Without contempt, court orders would lack enforceability. If parties could ignore orders without consequence, then litigation would break down, proceedings would stall, and outcomes would become meaningless. Contempt ensures that orders are taken seriously, compliance is enforceable, and the court's authority is preserved. It is one of the mechanisms that gives the legal system practical power. Contempt reflects the fundamental idea that the rule of law requires obedience to lawful authority, not because the court is always right, but because the system depends on structured compliance. Disagreements are resolved through process and not through defiance. A court order is not a suggestion. It is a directive backed by authority. Contempt of court is the mechanism that enforces that authority when compliance fails. It ensures that the legal system is not merely symbolic, but operational. The power of a court is not just in what it decides. The power is in whether those decisions are followed.
If you like this content, then kindly hit like, subscribe, and share. Caesar commands it.